Hello, and welcome to Neurodivergent Relationships with Dr. Kathy Marshak, the podcast for couples, families, and professionals who want to bridge the gap between neurotypical and neurodiverse worlds. In this episode, I'm sharing part 2 of a companion series with Survivor Guilt, Living a Beautiful Life Even Without the Ones You Love. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, I recommend you do. It lays the foundation for this conversation about the most excruciating choice of all, the choice to protect yourself, even when it means letting go of someone you love. So, if you're going to rise, you might as well shine. That's not just a pretty saying. For me, it's a survival plan. Because if I don't shine, through the ashes, through the heartbreak, how will my daughters ever find me in the fog of grief and despair? This is the story of the hardest choice I've ever made and had to make and keep making. The choice to protect myself even when it meant letting go of the people I love most. This is the story of Bianca and the trip to Kauai. My daughter Bianca is autistic. I'd faced many meltdowns over the years, but this trip was supposed to be different, a celebration of her high school graduation. I had taken everything to get her there. She has an IQ of 140, but the traditional school system was not built for her. She barely made it through high school with a special ed diploma. I worked tirelessly with her, hours of homework, advocating for her needs, pushing back against an education system that couldn't see her brilliance because it didn't fit their mold. And I worked just as hard to help her with her anger about our broken family. Howard, her father, never helped. He left me to carry it all. So when I planned Kauai, it was meant to be a gift, a memory we could hold on to. Instead, the pressure and sensory overload were too much. Security was called at the hotel after hours of her screaming. At the airport, during a yellow alert, security came again. On the flight home, I gave her a Klonopin to help her sleep. When we landed, I asked Howard to take her for 2 weeks so Phoebe and I could recover. I didn't know he and his wife Susan were leaving for Europe. So he did take her, but he left her with a total stranger, a house sitter. I found out when Howard sent me an email from overseas saying he could not be reached, and that he had done this so that I wouldn't try to destroy his vacation. I was terrified for Bianca. I drove to his house. The house sitter had been told to call the police if I showed up. When the police came, they told me to leave. They said she wasn't in danger, but they didn't understand. She was a vulnerable, autistic girl left with strangers. They warned me I'd be arrested if I stayed. So I chose me. Then there's the night with Phoebe, the night of Jameson Jet. With Phoebe, the crossroads came on a night she brought baby Jameson Jet to my house. She wanted money from her college fund to pay for living expenses. I reminded her that the fund was for education and that twice before she'd used it for tuition and then dropped her classes, took the money, and spent it on whatever she wanted. She was living with her unemployed boyfriend, Jared, and his parents. She was on public assistance for her and her baby, and Jared, apparently. I wanted her to see where this path was leading, but instead of hearing my concern, she heard only no. She stormed out of my upstairs office. I was alarmed that she'd drive away angry with her baby, Jameson Jet, in the car. I ran to stop her. The baby was in his carrier on the top step of my stairs. I reached for the handle, and she shoved me away so hard I hit the glass deck door and fell. The struggle was ugly, and the aftermath worse. Phoebe called the police and swore that I was the aggressor and had me arrested. I fought back only the way I could with the truth. I provided evidence to the court that I was the victim, and the case was eventually dismissed. Phoebe never faced charges. I thought this might be the beginning of healing. It wasn't. She pulled further away. To this day, both of my daughters deny that I am their mother. They've told stories fueled by Howard that I am dangerous, that they had no choice but to cut me off. When I filed for divorce, I asked Howard to part peacefully, to let our daughters grow up knowing they had two loving homes. But he wanted the house burned down and didn't care who was inside. So rather than be destroyed alongside my daughters, I stepped out of the fire. I chose me. Choosing yourself in these circumstances isn't empowerment wrapped in a bow. It's a Sophie's choice. It's irreversible. It leaves a scar that never fades. I live with the loss every day, and I live in a home filled with beauty, joy, and love, and because I refuse to let the fire consume me. I haven't stopped hoping for reconciliation, of course, because if my daughters follow that light, the light I'm shining, they will find me here, whole, still loving them, and believing in their ability to choose rightly. If this episode has spoken to you, I'd love for you to join me for the after-party discussion at drkathylearningcenter.thinkific.com. That's where the calendar of events is posted. We'll go deeper into the impossible crossroads between protecting yourself and protecting the people you love, and how to live with the weight of a choice that can't be undone. Here's some things to think about for the after-party discussion. Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and protecting someone you love? What fears or beliefs made that choice harder? How do you define choosing yourself without abandoning others? What has survival taught you about love? And if you could speak to your past self at that crossroads, what would you say? Until next time, remember, rising to the challenge is only half the work. The real courage is to shine.